What do you do when the prescription that used to fix everything simply stops working, and your doctor's only answer is to try a different one? I'm 83 now, and I went through 3 different prescriptions that each did exactly that before I stumbled onto a method so old that a real clinical trial found 40% of men regained normal erectile function after 6 months of it. No pill, no prescription. By the time the 3rd pill failed me, I'd started to feel like I was running out of road. My doctor mentioned, almost offhand, that we could try a 4th option, but nothing about the underlying problem had actually changed. Just the name on the bottle. You've probably felt that same sense of running out of options, cycling through solutions that all work the same way. That 40% number is what none of those 3 prescriptions ever touched. In a minute, I'll show you exactly what the method is. Here's what none of those 3 prescriptions ever touched. An erection depends on 3 systems working together: the hormonal piece, the nervous system signal, and blood flow, governed by nitric oxide. But there's a 4th piece almost nobody talks about, a physical structure, the muscle that helps trap blood where it needs to stay once it arrives. No pill touches that muscle directly. It just amplifies a signal and hopes the rest of the plumbing cooperates. 3 different prescriptions, 3 different doctors involved along the way, and not one of them ever mentioned that 4th piece. I don't think it was deliberate. I think it just falls outside the specific lane pharmaceuticals occupy, a physical structure that responds to training, not medication. And training doesn't fit neatly into a prescription pad. These days, I have more consistency than I've had in over a decade of cycling through prescriptions. I don't spend the hours before an intimate moment quietly wondering which version of my body might show up. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because 3 different pills never gave me that particular kind of peace, and this simple method did. Here's what reframed it for me. The blood vessels involved here are some of the smallest in your entire circulatory system, smaller than the ones feeding your heart, so circulation problems tend to show up here first. Researchers who study this treat it as a meaningful early signal. For 3 years, I slept 3 feet away from my wife, and it felt like 300 miles. She'd fall asleep first. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling like a roommate in my own marriage. I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't weakness, and it wasn't just age. Here's what no one ever sits a man down to explain. This isn't about willpower. It's about specific systems in your body quietly losing steam year after year while nobody tells you it's even happening. The pills my doctor handed me gave me headaches, made my chest feel tight, and honestly, they made me feel like I needed a pill just to feel like a man. I wasn't willing to live like that. There's a gentler way to bring those systems back, without any of that. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore. I'll show you exactly what changed it in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's the forgotten method. Pelvic floor exercises, the same muscle work known as Kegels. There's a muscle called the ischiocavernosus that helps trap blood where it needs to stay during an erection, and a clinical trial on pelvic floor training for erectile difficulty showed real, measurable improvement in firmness and the ability to maintain it, improvement that had nothing to do with any prescription. The exercise is simple. Contract the muscle you'd use to stop urination midstream. Hold a few seconds, release. Repeat for a set, a couple of times a day. What struck me most was that this wasn't new research. This kind of training has been studied for years, quietly, in physical therapy circles, while the pharmaceutical conversation stayed entirely separate, as if the 2 things had nothing to do with each other. 3 prescriptions, 3 different doctors, and not one of them ever mentioned a muscle you could train yourself, for free, without a single side effect to worry about. It's worth saying plainly, this isn't an overnight fix the way a pill is. A pill works on a given night or it doesn't. Muscle training builds gradually, the same way training any other muscle in your body does, a little stronger each week, not transformed by morning. That patience is exactly why it gets overlooked in a culture that wants the pill speed answer, even when the slower answer is the one that actually holds up over time. I added a few other pieces around the exercise itself. A walk most mornings in daylight, supporting circulation from a different direction entirely. Vegetables rich in dietary nitrate, feeding the same nitric oxide pathway the muscle work depended on to actually have something to work with. Better sleep, since testosterone production leans heavily on genuinely deep sleep, not just hours logged in bed. Less alcohol, since it undoes a fair share of what the rest of the routine was building. I gave the whole routine several weeks before judging it, learning from past experience that anything worth doing rarely proves itself in the first few days. The exercise itself took less time each day than brushing my teeth, which made it easy to actually stick with long enough to see whether it worked, unlike the elaborate routines I'd half-heartedly attempted and abandoned in years past. My wife and I took an unplanned weekend trip a while back, and there wasn't a single moment where I found myself doing that old mental math, wondering how things would go. I was just there, present, the way I wanted to be. I think about a man named Raymond who wrote in 79, 4 different prescriptions over the years, none of them a permanent solution. He said learning about the pelvic floor piece specifically, something entirely outside the pharmaceutical conversation he'd been stuck in for a decade, felt like being handed a door he hadn't known existed. He said it took him a while to trust something that simple could matter after so many complicated, expensive attempts had failed. Raymond told me he'd actually asked his pharmacist more than once whether there was anything else worth trying, and each time the answer stayed within the same narrow lane of pills and doses. Nobody in that entire lane ever once mentioned a muscle. He said the moment it finally clicked was reading about the specific muscle by name, something concrete he could picture and actually work on, rather than another vague suggestion to talk to your doctor about options. He told me he'd printed out the exercise instructions and kept them folded in his wallet for the first few weeks, checking them like a recipe until the routine became automatic. If you're on medication for blood pressure or your heart, please hear this clearly. This method doesn't replace your prescription, and you should never stop or change a medication on your own. If your pill has stopped working as well as it used to, mention that directly to your doctor. What I want you to walk away with is this. After 3 failed prescriptions, the answer wasn't a 4th one. It was something entirely outside that whole conversation, a muscle trained directly, the way you'd train any other part of your body. I think about how close I came to just accepting a 4th prescription without ever asking a different kind of question. It would have been the easy path, the familiar one, and it likely would have failed the same way the previous 3 eventually did. What stopped me, honestly, was pure exhaustion with the pattern itself, not any special insight or courage. I was simply too tired of the same disappointing cycle to keep repeating it blindly, and that tiredness turned out to be exactly what pushed me to ask a different kind of question for the first time in years. Sometimes the willingness to look elsewhere doesn't come from wisdom. It comes from running out of patience with what isn't working, and that's a perfectly good enough reason to finally look somewhere new. Your erections don't disappear just because you got older. They fade when the systems behind them, blood flow, nitric oxide, hormones, energy, and recovery, slowly stop getting the support they need. Ignore that long enough, and it becomes harder to reverse. That's why I take this concentrated formula every morning. Not one ingredient trying to fix everything, but several working together to support circulation, energy, and drive from the inside out. It's a natural, doctor-backed protocol designed to support pathways your body already knows how to use. No prescription, nothing artificial. Stronger, present, confident again. And unlike the pills I tried, I didn't feel disconnected from my own body. No headaches, just steady, gradual change. My wife noticed before I even said a word. The presentation is linked right below this video. It won't replace your doctor or a healthy lifestyle. It's simply there to support your body. At 83, my wife and I aren't roommates anymore, and it's not too late for you. I think about the man I was, cycling through prescriptions and running out of road, one refill at a time. And I think about the man I am now, who finally found something outside that whole cycle entirely. That's not vanity. That's dignity. Being the man who kept looking past the obvious next prescription. If you've ever felt like you were running out of options, cycling through the same kind of fix over and over, tell me in the comments. And if this kind of alternative explanation is useful to you, subscribe. There's more of this ahead.